We're about to be joined by Alan Quinlan. First, we want to bring you this. It's a quick clip of Andy Dunn talking about the match and Ireland's limitations in attack.
It's a big worry when you watch an Irish side for 80 minutes who manage 3 offloads, for example, and it's just so blunt, such a lack of cutting edge in attack. It's unfortunate. It's a pattern that has continued from the tail end of the Joe Schmidt era, and now it's arguably more blunt. We're not using the clever kind of starter plays that Joe would have used with the team that gave us some level of creativity in attack. That seems to have faded from our game. So now it's lots of hard work, lots of effort, but very little return.
Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Let's talk about the attack before we talk about the defence. What's wrong with our attack? Why are we so blunt?
Well, we're underpowered as well. So the first point of contact and getting over the gain line is against a very powerful side yesterday, and we've got to put that in context here. The set piece was good, but we weren't really making any sort of inroads over the gain line, so that makes the attack more difficult. A couple of times, James Lowe's try that he was tackled into touch. I think that was really good attack. The line-out maul, they rumble forward 10 yards, good execution, little wraparound pass to get Keenan going out wide. France scrambled across really well, and just millimetres. James Lowe got to try. Ireland possibly 10-0 up if they get the conversion. But I just think we kicked the ball too much yesterday. We kicked well at times, and then kicked really poor at other times.
Who decides if we're kicking? Can I ask you about that? Let's tease that out, because there's stuff doing the rounds where Ireland turn over the ball a couple of times, and instead of passing the ball out the back line, when the back line is fully formed, we kick it away. It happens first minute, it happens a little bit later on in the second half as well. And the first one is Billy Burns, and I think it's actually Gary Ringrose who kicks the ball away in the second half. Why are they kicking those balls when this is an opportunity for them to attack the French backline?
Because it's a tactic that was probably dictated by the weather pre-game, where the conditions were horrendous, and they wanted to not play in their own half, obviously, but play for territory, challenge the French back three. There was probably, even going into the game, I thought Doolan could be susceptible to the high ball. He was magnificent yesterday. He's not the tallest guy that you're going to meet, and he won a lot of those aerial battles from very, very good kicks at times. But if you want to build that tempo and pressure and really stretch France and make them put in the tackles, I think you've got to have more cutting edge in attack. And that one from Billy Burns was glaringly obvious. Ireland turned the ball over and it goes straight back to him. And it's a communication thing as well from Henshaw and Ringrose outside to try and move the ball. France were very, very narrow in defence, and there was a great opportunity for Ireland to put the ball through the hands, and we probably didn't do that enough. So it's game management, and it's identifying those options that are in front of you. And we've said it for so long about Sexton and Murray, their decision making over the years when Ireland have been successful, and their ability to identify space, and it's a confidence thing as well, Jerry. When your confidence is low, and after the loss last week, the injuries, probably the week they've had, they thought, and look, it could have worked. If Ireland won the game, you'd be saying it's a great tactic, but France, the scoreline flattered us a bit, to be fair, and the character they showed was brilliant, but they've got to be more ruthless in attack and with their decision making, and cut out the mistakes and look for those opportunities. When you're up high and you're doing commentary and you can see straight down the pitch from a high area, it's you can see that space and the opportunity to create that space is there for Ireland. So maybe it's a confidence thing, but it was pre-planned to kick the ball, but kicking the ball 47 times for me is way too much. Particularly, when they were chasing the game, Ronan Kelleher's try gets him back into it, and the reaction is good. I think Ian Henderson and Cian Healy going off, there was just a feeling there. I had a feeling that it's just all going pear-shaped here, and we were let off the hook by France a couple of times in that 15-minute period after half-time. So you've got to learn quick, and in big games like this, the decision making and that cutting edge has to be a lot better.
Does the decision making of the 10 improve with another 10 caps, or is that who are we seeing now who Billy Burns is? Because obviously last week the conversation was about the specific error. This week we've got a slightly bigger body of evidence to see. Not, again, he had to go off as well, so not a full game, not a full opportunity for him to show what he can do. But because I see other people saying that actually he ran the attack quite well, and he takes the ball slightly flatter than Ross Byrne does, for example, and so therefore probably is worth investing a little bit of time and energy and effort in to see if he can make it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know myself, Ger. I think, look, James Ryan, Peter O'Mahony and Quinlan Doris are a big loss. I think the depth there and the difference between, even the impact off the bench, I think, losing those kind of players, we don't have that strength and depth. Now, the players that come on are very good players, but it's just having that experience and ability to read the game and have those subtle touches from the forwards as well. Doris for me is a massive loss because he can give you so much in attack. His footwork, his carrying ability is superb, and we still don't know enough about Billy Burns. Our set piece was good, so he got kind of good opportunities yesterday, but as I said, we kicked a lot. Our game plan was limited yesterday. And when we moved it wide, we were drifting across a lot in attack. So being underpowered doesn't help. You just kind of had the feeling a little bit that maybe Bundy Aki, that would have been a game that it would have suited Bundy Aki because of his extra power and his aggression as well. But it's frustrating. It's frustrating. But look, maybe that's as good as we can be against a very good French side yesterday. But I know they look back and it'll be frustrating because there were certainly times to put the ball through the hands. But it's difficult against France because, as I said, we didn't get over the gain line, Jerry. We got smashed back.
So that's the forwards,
particularly around the fringes.
That's the missing forwards would have helped us to get over the gain line, and then all of a sudden the attack opens up for the backs, and you can then judge whether or not the backs are. It's more fair to judge the backs. I guess we understand though that against the top teams, against South Africa, potentially against Australia, New Zealand, certainly against England, and now against France, that we will be on the back foot a little bit. So we're looking for a back line that are going to be able to deal with that, and whether or not Billy Burns is right, I still think the jury has to be out on that one. But what about Mike Catt? Because a lot of people are singling him out. Is he telling Billy Burns to kick the ball, or the out half or the scrum half to kick the ball 48 times? Is that his design, or did they do that because yesterday we were in a yellow weather warning with gale force winds gusting 60 to 70 miles an hour predicted before the game? The conditions were actually much better for the game than we had anticipated they would be when we woke up. But was that pre-programmed, and who is responsible for that, and what is Mike Catt's role in this?
I think it's a mixture of all the coaches, really. I think, but he's probably the one that makes that final decision, and it's something that it's glaringly obvious. There was times, but I think it's easier to look back, and when I'm talking about good decision making, good players who can read the game and read and get a feel for the situation is what makes good teams and defines good teams. Look at their attack when they ran at us there particularly for the first try. There's 3 or 4 offloads in that attack. We don't seem to be able to do that. Porter's carrying the ball, Burns, Stander, Henderson. They're hitting a brick wall. They're hitting brick walls, and we're not able to, get over that gain line with the initial point of contact. So it's pointless trying to attack and put width in the ball when there's a load of French players out the back line. And credit to Sean Edwards, what he's done with that French side, because they look so organised in defence. They got off the line way quicker than we did. And I know you were talking about defence before I came on. Our defensive line speed was pretty passive at times yesterday, and we slipped off a lot of tackles. So, they scrambled brilliantly to get back, but kicking the ball 47 times is down to the backs coach. And what you're doing with the ball. So he's got to take responsibility for that. And I'm sure the coaches would have kind of put their hands over their face a couple of times when we kicked at different stages when the ball should have been put through the hands. And I always think of England 2 years ago when they beat France convincingly in Twickenham. They kicked it 47 or 8 times in that game, but they scored 6 tries. The kicking was tactically very, very good, and they were on the front foot and they were dominating up front. So we weren't dominating that French pack. We did a lot of brilliant things, and stealing those 3 lineouts stopped a lot of French momentum in that first half yesterday. But we just didn't have that killer punch to if you're ahead, Ger, and you're winning the game, and Ireland are 10-0 up, well, then you can kind of kick more, and every kick is a good kick, if you like, and you don't have to force it, and you can let the opposition have the ball a bit and stay compact in defence. And it's just that game management and that bit of control that we didn't have yesterday. But look, like I say, it's hard to be overcritical, because it's not as if 5 different players should have played yesterday. It was a terrible week for them, with the injuries and the players that have been out, and maybe they were undercooked as regards running a backline last week with the uncertainty around Sexton, and they went back to the more obvious and simpler tactic was to kick the ball a lot.
It does feel very Groundhog Day, though, Alan, this idea that we're sitting here talking after an Ireland defeat, and Ireland have kicked the ball too much, and Ireland haven't been able to handle the opposition's line speed. These are conversations that we've had many times before.
Yeah, they are, but you're playing against a very good side on as well. Willems, Bernard Leroux, Aldrich causes a lot of problems, and yards were hard to get yesterday, particularly in those tight exchanges, and passing the ball to Robbie Henshaw and just getting him to try and punch up through the midfield all the time is fine, but it's just you're lacking X factor players who can bring stepping ability and a real physical power that caused the opposition serious problems. So we haven't the biggest players in the world to do that, and that was an issue as well. So France are very, very physical side, and that's where Ireland struggled yesterday, is getting over the gain line. And there was a period there, that period in the first half, 20-25 minutes, Ireland were really superb, and then the hammer blow of the try. And you guys making really, really poor decisions defensively. Gibson Park did for the first try, and James Lowe slipped off Doolan for the second try. Maybe France would have scored on other occasions if they didn't get those tries. But, in the build-up to that try, players falling off tackles, offloading out of the tackle, and Dupont was exceptional. So we don't have a Dupont. We don't have that kind of X factor in the individuals. They're all decent players and very good players, but we have to try and blood some more players and find that extra little bit of power. If we can find big, powerful guys, we've got to find really good footballers who can create space against the bigger teams. And that was probably disappointing yesterday. When you look back, that just not creating those opportunities or developing those chances that you felt were there for the taking against a very good side as well. But Sean Edwards just snuffed Ireland out.
Well, that's a perfect time to bring this up, because let's talk about the Ireland defence, right? It's successive games now where glaring defensive errors have happened. There was a debate in the Virgin Studios after the match about whether or not this is a systems versus an individuals issue. I don't know. I'm really interested in what you think is going on, because, Andy Farrell is a renowned defensive coach. He now has a full-time looking after defence coach in Simon Easterby, and that combination hasn't produced Ireland's best defensive performances. I also think that, saying, we only conceded 15 points against France, I mean, we didn't really. If there was an XG or an XP in rugby, France should have scored a lot more. At the start of the second half, they should have run the try in underneath the post. That would have been another 7. There's a fairly easy missed kick. All of a sudden, you're getting to 25 points conceded at home. It wasn't a great defensive performance from Ireland, was it?
No, it wasn't. And if you look at the 4 tries, Jared, that they've conceded in the championship, the 2 against Wales and the 2 yesterday, they all could have been prevented. I think it was at times getting too narrow. players just look. It can happen where you fall off a tackle, and that can happen. But I just think it's the read. James Lowe once yesterday is probably the hardest one. You know, Doolan. He just bounced off Doolan, but he's got to probably go lower there and make sure that he smothers. If he's going high, that he smothers him. He just bounced off him, and in the build up to that penalty try yesterday, they won a really good ball off the lineup, but we were very passive off the line. Ross Byrne, Robbie Henshaw, Gary Ringrose, really, really passive. I thought our aggression and that line speed should have been a lot quicker, and we invited them on a little bit, and we were sitting back on our heels a little bit, waiting for some of those tackles that, you know, France, and it's no surprise for me for Edwards. Like, at times you think, God, France must be offside. They must be offside, but they're just pushing the pin of the collar, that defensive line, so much, and that's just down to him preparing his team to just take away that space, and he's done it to so many times with Wales. Whereas we're not. I just felt we weren't getting off the line quickly enough, and that, you know, in that dominant period they had in the second half, they seemed to be getting a lot of traction getting over the gain line.
Is that because, you know, does the line speed come about because we're not sure what we're trying to do in defence?
No, I wouldn't say we're not sure of it, because a lot of this stuff is off first and second phase. And look, the desire to make the tackles is there, but I just think we can be more aggressive and quicker off the line, and have more. It's not desire, but just more energy in sprinting across the line. And maybe it's something in the legs. It was in the second half. I think we were better in the first half at it, but it's maybe it's gone out of the legs from the effort level put in the first half. My big worry in the first half was that how taxing it is in Ireland. It's at times nearly all the time it's harder defending, and it takes more out of your legs. But the effort that Ireland put in, and the energy, and you know, I thought it was they were brilliant in that first half. Just didn't register on the scoreboard. But going back to the defence, the 4 tries we conceded were preventable, and they were all down to you know, for George North's try last week, Henderson stander way too narrow at the side of the ruck. You know, look, it's unfortunate the ball pops out of the ruck when Navidi scoops it up and it lands in George North's hands. That happens sometimes, but James Lowe came up and in for the Reece Zammit try. Gibson Park comes up and in yesterday on Fiku when Ruddock had him. And, you know, the initial point of contact from the carry from Fiku up the middle of the field, and then when they switch back to Doolan, you know, James Lowe's got to wrap him up there and stop that.
The structure is an issue as much as the individuals. The structure is.
I think the only thing I'd say about the structure is just getting off the line a bit quicker. The organisation is fine, and, you know, look, they'll get better at that. I don't have an issue with that. I think it's individual errors. It's individual errors that cost them, and, you know, against a very powerful side. You know, if Ireland won the game, we'd probably be saying, look, we were fortunate on occasions, and you've got to ride your luck a little bit. But I think the 2 tries yesterday were just that bit soft that we gave. You could argue that, look, they had other opportunities, but even for that try just after half time, Julian Marchand goes straight up the middle between Herring and Van der Fleer. That's something you wouldn't really expect to happen. Something that shouldn't happen. A straight up tackle between 2 forwards there like that, and they probably should have scored under the post. Dupont passes and it hits Willemse in the head and goes dead. So, you know, what Simon Easter will be frustrated about there is that is 2 forwards just missing that tackle. He goes straight through the middle of them. And that's the disappointing part. So it's not a system thing, I think. And look, they'll get better. I think they, you know, if they can take the positives out of this game, and again, it's a harsh lesson, and we keep repeating it. You said it on, but maybe we're just the quality and that step up to the next level is just not there at the moment, and it's something we've got to absorb and take. And do we need to be overcritical? Are we good enough? Do we have world-class players? How many Irish players would be on the Lions team at the moment? And that's probably where you look at it. And but they've got to dust themselves now and try and win against Italy and Scotland and England, which is very difficult because whatever about losing a couple of games in the championship, if you end up only beating Italy, which is a real possibility now, well, that would be a disaster. I know we're in a rebuilding phase, but that would be a disaster. And there's more pressure on the team now to get a performance in Rome.
Well, it would be a bigger disaster if Italy was the only win they got and they didn't even utilise the Italy game to be experimental with. So I guess Andy Farrell has to experiment against Italy. What changes would you make, Alan? How experimental would you be?
Yeah, well, I think the fly half position is the big debate, and do you bring in someone like Harry Byrne now and give him a start against Italy? What does it say to Ross Byrne and Billy Burns? They're two very good players, but are they top-class international players that potentially that you need? You need to be successful. If you're going to win and compete for Six Nation or even go beyond the quarterfinal of the next World Cup, and we have to find a replacement for Jonathan Sexton, and he may still be there. I think if he was there yesterday, he would have made a difference. I think his leadership and his decision-making under pressure, particularly the decision-making under pressure, Sexton rarely makes a bad decision under pressure. He's sharp. He's a good reader of the game. And I think, to develop someone like that isn't a quick fix solution. So it is an opportunity to look at Harry Byrne. A lot of people saying during the week, look, he hasn't enough top quality games played with Leinster in Europe, but some players end up playing for their countries before they play a lot of games for their club side. And
James Ryan, Brian O'Driscoll.
Yeah, James Ryan. Yeah, Larmour as well probably played more for Ireland than he did for Leinster. I think if you look at Intimac and when he played with France, probably his first 10 or 12 games for France were average, and there was a lot of errors and mistakes in there. His attacking flair was there, but
can I ask a question on this?
He went to another level.
There was broad celebration, I think, when Crowley decided not to answer Ronan O'Gara's call to come and join him in France, from Munster fans, and I guess by extension Ireland fans going, well, geez, that means at least we might get to see him play for Ireland over the next while. But maybe the right thing for us to do is to send those kids away for a year or two to play a lot of rugby in the top 14 or in the whatever Premiership it's called these days, and get some time. Because how much rugby realistically will Crowley play for Munster over the next while if Ben Healy has to get some game time, if JJ Hanrahan has to get some game time, and if maybe the future Ireland number 10 actually comes back from the injury that we've been waiting for him to come back in Joey Carberry. He's third or fourth choice or maybe second choice at Munster over the next while. What's wrong with sending him away for a year or two?
Nothing really. I think it's something that again was spoken about a bit during the week, and it's come up for debate that maybe it's something Ireland need to look at now and the provinces need to look at. But the provinces don't want to lose the players, and Jake Flannery is another one in Munster who's a very talented player as well. So suddenly Munster have Ben Healy, Jake Crowley, Jack Crowley and Jake Flannery, three very promising young players, and getting game time from all is difficult. There's one or two can go to Connacht. What will Jack Carty say about that? It's difficult, but if you can get him game time wherever, whether it be going out on loan for a bit or going for a short period of time, I think that would be beneficial. The more of these guys we see playing and getting exposed to a higher level of rugby, the better. You don't just send them out for the sake of it, because a lot of these players will be developing in the provinces anyway. But game time is crucial at this stage, and maybe we'll see some of that happen in Germany. Maybe it's the right thing to do now to look at that, because with the, I wouldn't say it's lack of depth. We want to get a player or get one or two players challenging Jonathan Sexton, trying to get to that same level, because at any level, for any team being successful in international rugby, you need a top quality fly half, and there's potentially a couple of them there. Hopefully Carberry can come back and have a lucky run without any bloody injuries and get some matches under his belts. But it's definitely something that a debate that's going to rumble on to try and get these players. You can't just ship them out everywhere here and there. But
no, but we could like if Crowley had gone to play under Rod for a couple of seasons.
Would he played in La Rochelle? Would Roger played him in the top 14? Do you know what I mean? Or would he been sitting in the background? That's the question you have to ask. They have a couple of fly halves there who, so it doesn't always work out perfectly. You know, you'd be probably better off these guys going playing in the championship in the UK or something like that. Than maybe going to the top 14 in France, unless they're going to start and they're going to play a number of games.
Isn't that what the IRFU should be doing with those players then? Wouldn't that be a good thing for David Nucifora to be sorting out, as opposed to just moving players within the provinces who are on the fringes of the Ireland squad? That next generation, actually, that logjam doesn't exist, and so that, you know, they're still contracted to us, but somebody in England is picking up the vast majority of their wages, and probably they're earning a bit more.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm sure if David Nucifora goes to Munster and say, well, Jake Flannery and Jack Crowley need to go somewhere in England, I'm sure Johan van Brand might be best pleased by that. So all the different coaches themselves in the provinces, and they'll want to keep that depth. If they've got an injury or two, then at fly half, you know, Sod's law would dictate it. You know, they're undercooked in that position, so they want to keep as much depth there. And but it's something that needs to be looked at for sure.
Okay,
we're 2.5 years, 2 years, half years out from a World Cup, and if we could get 3 or 4 of these guys playing matches and you know, stepping up a level and showing their potential, that would be great.
Yeah, 100%. Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
8:08 this morning. Alan Quinlan there. More Six Nations coming your way a little bit later on. We'll talk with Neil Tracy on the Type 5 at 9 o'clock. We'll bring you the full chat with Andy Dunn at 9:30. If you've missed any of it live, you can check them out on our YouTube channel or on the OTB Podcast Network.